Collapse of NFL player Damar Hamlin and life-saving CPR efforts after he suffered cardiac arrest last week has prompted one local fire department to now take action.
They're offering free CPR training, a course to the public. Western Mass News reporter Libby James has the details.
In the last 2 weeks, the notoriety the CPR has gotten after the event in the NFL, we thought this would be an opportunity to make an offering to the public that they could come in, learn hands-only CPR.
The life-saving roles, CPR, and an automated external defibrillator played in the recovery of Buffalo Bills player Damar Hamlin after suffering cardiac arrest on the field gave the Wilbraham Fire Department an idea. Fire Chief Michael Andrews tells Western Mass News they decided to offer free CPR and AED training to the public. He says this is not a certification course. It's to help people feel more comfortable.
Unfortunately, these incidents do happen, so the more people we get trained on it, the more opportunity there'll be for somebody to help.
The department's EMS coordinator and paramedic Jeffrey Wittek will be the one to lead the instructors for the training. After demonstrating how to properly give CPR and use an AED, he explains why they decided to teach hands-only CPR.
The old mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, people have found that they were resistant to action because they didn't want to put their mouth on somebody.
And when using an AED, he shows how simple it is with the voice commands to use when in a stressful situation.
We want people to be able to feel comfortable in responding.
For those interested in a certification, there'll be a sign-up sheet at the event. The official training course is on February 1st, and the information to register will be on our website, westernmassnews.com, under the blue As Seen on TV button. In Wilbraham, Libby James for Western Mass News.